call the meeting to order. It's 6:30. So it is 6:30 on Monday, September the 13th. And this is the September meeting of the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal Committee of the Whole, Administration and Finance. And so it's I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting and see that we don't have anybody joining us by Zoom that I know of at this point in time. And all members of council and our two volunteer members are here with us this evening. And it's my pleasure, before we start the meeting, to welcome Mr. Pete Rainville as our newest community volunteer member of the committee, replacing Jack Bradley. And so this is Pete's first meeting. And so before we start the meeting and before I call for approval of the agenda, we do the, I guess it's called the oath of confidentiality to the
declaration of confidentiality.
Declaration of confidentiality. And so just for Pete's information, the volunteer members of the committee are welcome to come to the in-camera sessions when the in-camera session is not dealing with a personnel matter. And so it's oftentimes we deal with property matters and things like that in the in-camera sessions. And of course, everything that occurs in an in-camera session is to be kept confidential. But when it gets to personnel matters, we kind of excuse the members, the volunteer members of the committee. So Rebecca, if you'll do the honors with Mr. Rainville, then I'll welcome Mr. Rainville formally to the committee.
So we'll just stand complete apart for this one and just repeat after me, please. So I, Pete Rainville,
I, Pete Rainville,
having been appointed to the Committee of the Whole
having been appointed to the Committee of the Whole
for Administration and Finance
for Administration and Finance,
as a Citizen Advisory Member,
as a Citizen Advisory Member,
do hereby declare
do hereby declare
that I will not disclose to any person
that I will not disclose to any person
any information or document
any information or documents
arising from confidential meetings
arising from confidential meetings
of the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal
of the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal
that come to my knowledge
that come to my knowledge
or possession by reason of those meetings,
or by possession of
reason
reason
of those meetings,
of those meetings,
except if the information or document
except for the information or documents
has otherwise already been properly made public.
has already otherwise been made public.
And I make this solemn promise
And I make this solemn promise
and declaration conscientiality,
and declaration of confidentiality,
believing it to be true
believing it to be true,
and knowing that
and knowing that
it is of the same force and effect as if made under oath.
it is the same force and effect made under oath.
All right, if we could just sign here. And welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Pete.
Welcome to the committee. And so I just wanted to thank you for putting your name forward in response to the advertisement that we put out. Pleased to have you joining the committee. Know a little bit about your background, but might want to give you a minute or 30 seconds if you'd like to give us a little bit more of your background than I know.
Sure. I have a Bachelor of Commerce with a major in marketing. I spent approximately 10 years in radio and television broadcasting, on the air, off the air management. After that, I was called upon to help revive a Ontario corporation that was owned by the Ministry of Health indirectly through hospitals in Ottawa in the area, which was losing about $1 million a year. It was a laundry service and a food service. We had, over the course of about 10 years, turned that into a profitable not-for-profit, if you will. There's a certain amount of money you can make as a not-for-profit. I stayed there for 23 years, built a 185,000 square foot state-of-the-art facility, which when I left was the most modern and efficient laundry processing facility in the world. During the last 2 years of that tenure, I started a cider business. That's an alcoholic cider business, which we eventually moved our company here in Spencerville to be closer to the orchard and We also wanted to get out of the city, to be honest, raise our children in a better environment, and we chose Spencerville, and chose the home of Dr. McIntosh, or the former home of Dr. McIntosh. Recently in April, I sold that business and have now moved back into equity trading, stocks basically, and also taking care of the 2 kids and the dog in the house, because my wife has taken over the cider portion of our business and created a boutique in town. After losing her original boutique in the fire at Joe's Computer, which I also fought as a volunteer firefighter in our community, but we are here to stay, and I'm very active with numbers and finance, and hopefully I can contribute to this process.
Well, thank you very much for that good background. I'm sure other members of the committee are better aware of your reason for moving to the community and your background. So thanks very much and welcome to the committee. Okay, so now I'll move on, and the next item on the agenda, of course, is approval of the agenda, and the chair is looking for a mover and a seconder to bring the approval of the agenda forward.
So moved.
Councillor Cameron moving. Does he have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Deschamps. So we're approving the agenda as presented. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. And the next item on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Does anyone have a disclosure of pecuniary interest here this evening?
Not here.
No disclosures, and the minutes will so note. And so item number 4 on the agenda is business arising from the previous committee of the whole meeting. And that was the meeting that took place on August the 16th. And we have those minutes of the August 16th meeting in front of us. And so now the chair is looking for any business arising from those minutes. And while you're just consulting your notes, I don't see any hands up. While you're consulting your notes, I'll raise the first issue. So as business arising. So on that, on those minutes, we had a delegation from Mr. Kevin Hawley, and this is of course on page 2 of 90. And during that discussion with Mr. Hawley at 5A and 6A, there was a talk about a Johnstown public meeting that was to be organized within a short period of time. And just from the chair to the CAO, has there been a date established for that public meeting in Johnstown?
Through the chair, that meeting is scheduled for Thursday, September 23rd at 6 p.m.
Okay, Thursday, September the 23rd at 6 p.m. And I imagine that that will be at the South Ed Center?
That is correct.
Okay, so we can get that into our calendars. And that was my business arising. Does anybody else have any other business arising? Councillor Cameron.
Mr. Mayor, I think you should point out that this was a joint committee meeting with the committee of the whole, with administration and finance, as well as the public works and environmental services.
Yes, it was a joint meeting and I forgot that. Thanks for bringing that back to mind. And just so that Mr. Rainville and Mr. Robertson are aware, it was a joint meeting because of the month of August, and we sort of combined things because the AMO meeting takes up pretty much 4 days of that third week. So do you have any business arising, Councillor?
I do not, Mr. Mayor, other than the Barclay Green was discussed, and well, it was discussed, and there's nothing else that I have. Thank you.
And I think just by way of follow-up to that, we should indicate to members of the committee that the treasurer did inform us today that she sent out the invoices to the people who are going to be beneficiaries of that drain. And that Barclay drain is basically in Dundas, South Dundas County, which is next door to us. And under the Drainage Act, any people that are on the drain can petition to have work done to the drain, maintenance work done to the drain. And once a council receives a petition to have maintenance work done to a drain, there's a certain process that takes place. and it's a public process, and meetings are held, and the work is done. And then once the work is done, the drainage engineer assesses the cost of that work back to the beneficiaries of the drain. And it just so happens that there were 12 properties.
There were 12 invoices, but there were more than 12 properties because there are some property owners that have multiple properties.
Okay, so there were 12 invoices sent to landowners in our township that are going to be beneficiaries of the work in that county. And so those landowners get invoiced by us. We're responsible for collecting that money and then transferring that money to South Dundas, which is paid for the work. Now, many people are not aware of the process, and then all of a sudden they get an invoice from us and they're all upset. And I think the treasurer today, and unfortunately, she's in a bad position where she has to take these calls, and sometimes people are quite irate, and it's too bad because, I mean, it is a public process, but lots of times people don't pay attention to the process, and the invoice comes to them kind of out of the blue. And so then we're the bad guys and have to collect the money. But one thing I will point out to members of council and members of the committee, and maybe I'll just let the treasurer point it out, is that we do have a mechanism to take some of the bite out of the invoice, especially if the invoice that the person has received is more than $300 or $3,000?
300.
300. So do you want to just explain how we kind of help?
Certainly, through council, they passed a bylaw that set out some payment options for landowners. And if it is under $300, the payment is due within 30 days of the invoice, but over $300, council has given a grace of 12 equal payments, no interest. So the bill can be paid over a year without any interest added to that invoice.
Right, and I should point out that some people did receive invoices for $2,000 or $3,000 because of the large acreages that they own, and the amount that you pay towards the work on the drain, if you're a beneficiary, is based on the acreage that the drainage engineer presumes to benefit from that drain. So, okay, so with those few words, I'm going to move on. And there's no other business arising. I'm going to go to item number 5 on the agenda. Item number 5 on the agenda is delegations and presentations. And our first presentation and only presentation tonight will be from the treasurer, which is a sort of a pre-budget background presentation. So to the treasurer.
We're going to have the clerk bring up the presentation on the TV screens ahead of you there. So I want to start off with the presentation that typically this presentation I would present to committee in November. So I am bringing it in advance of what my normal schedule is. There's downfalls with that, but I think the best thing is for us to start talking earlier in 22 about capital rather than waiting till December or January. So hopefully we can do the capital in November and start, having good conversations. So the first slide basically is kind of giving you an analysis of the distribution of the tax levy that we levied in 2021. You can see that the majority of our tax levy comes from residential properties, followed by commercial. But you can also see that our farm properties actually have almost 7 or 8% of the total property count, but only contribute about 2.5% of the levy itself. So our next slide is basically describing the difference between the tax levy versus the tax rate. So the levy itself, as I say, is the amount of money that we levy against all property owners in all classes. And as you can see by the 2021, the total levy was about 6 million and change. So 1% levy increase in 2022 is 60,182, which is not a lot of money extra for us for the township to spend on operating the capital. The tax rate is determined by taking that tax levy and apportioning it over all the several tax classes based on a ratio, and that ratio is set by the county. So our total tax rate is based on the lower tier, the county, and the education rate. And you can see the percent split. We're about 56% of that total tax rate is maintained by the township.
And if I could just stop there, we're responsible as the collection agency, so we collect all those 3 levels of taxes, and then we pass the county tax over to the county on a preset schedule, and we pass the education tax directly over to the boards of education on a preset schedule.
Yeah, that's legislated by the province and the counties. So my next slide is, and I typically use this slide, is the impacts on the operating budget, first and foremost. As I say, the drawback of doing it this early is that there's a lot of things that I don't know yet. OMPF is one of the things, typically I don't hear about OMPF allocation until closer to November. So there is a little bit of drawback with bringing that for you. Unfortunately, the last couple of years, we've seen a decrease in the OMPF funding, so I don't anticipate an increase in our OMPF. I actually anticipate a decrease. I just don't know what that amount's going to be.
I'll just interject there. OMPF, Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. And that's been one of our basic sources of provincial funding for quite a number of years, but the province has been ratcheting it backwards for probably the last 8 years or so.
Yeah, for at least significantly to us for the last 2. The other impacts that are usually impacting our operating budget is policing costs. We don't know what those are yet. We would get those again sometime in October, November. Conservation Authority levy, I don't know what the impact of that is, although I have heard that the authority is, conservation authorities are all suffering from lack of funding. So that may be a problem for our budget. And insurance, as always, seems to be something that's an unknown. And hopefully it doesn't hit us too hard in 2022. We did purchase a grader through a loan through RBC, so the addition of those loan payments will increase the tax levy by that 1.7% or $102,000. There will be an offset, as you can see. There is a loan payment coming off, and the decrease part of there is a loan payment from Komatsu is coming off in February, so there will be a decrease of about 0.5% or $30,000 that can help to offset that increase. Some combined payroll increases total about 43,000, almost 44,000, almost 1% levy. In annual CPI for salaries as well as honorariums for council and fire. Right now, I've anticipated or estimated that at just over 1%. We don't get that information again specific from owners until later in November, because it's usually an October over November ratio. So we have to wait until November to get that information. But that certainly will have an impact on the operating budget. We do know that our WSIB premium rates are going to go up. We've been provided that information. The overall impact is fairly minor, but it's still add to the increase. CPP, I mentioned this last year, and we were talking in 2021's budget, that CPP is having a graduated increase every year. So it'll go another 0.25% to what, 545 to 570, as well as the maximum earnings are going to increase. So there'll be an additional amount of money going towards the operating budget for CPP contributions. We match those dollar for dollar. Right now, I have taken off a schedule of assessment from MPAC. We have not seen a lot of growth to date. A lot of the value, when I do a tax 21 tax rate on the assessment that we have on the books right now, only it gives us another almost $7,800. And the main reason for that is that the bulk of that change is our farm tax. And it sounds like we grew a lot of farm tax, but what happened is the roll returned as RT, and then people submitted to MPAC and said, no, it should have been farm tax all along. you need to change me back to farm tax, so we have, you know, just switched that residential tax rate to farm, which is only a quarter of the value of residential, so we're not getting a whole lot. Although I did say in the council, in the CAO's administrative report in August, that we did have MPAC in the office looking at some permits and building plans for some of our larger industrial commercial partners. So we are still hopeful that we're going to see that assessment hit the roll. They closed the tax roll updates mid-November. So again, I'll have more information when I come back when we do our next budget meetings. I can provide a better update as to how much our assessment has changed year over year. And hopefully we have a little bit more extra tax dollars to add to the levy.
Just to interject there, the big thing is that we won't get any increase in assessment in 2022. We won't get any increase in assessment from the Greenfield project because it won't complete until March of 2022. And it's very unlikely that we'll get any increase in the 2022 increase in assessment from the Prisbian warehouse, which will also be, but it will complete, I'm told it will complete by December the 31st. And if it completes by December the 31st, and they get an occupancy permit by December the 31st, that assessment should come full bore on the 2022 assessment roll, should it not?
Yeah, it will. It probably won't reflect in the roll return, but it will be a supplementary bill that we would add at a later date.
And when did you say the close off was for the
Mid-November.
Mid-November, yeah, probably won't
So it
hit
won't
that.
hit that roll return. So
Councillor Cameron, or Councillor Dillaball wants in.
Yes, thank you. You're saying the impact was here in August? Now to visit or to tell us, like, we haven't had an assessment, should have had it in 2020, we didn't. Are you saying that they're not gonna do 2021 either?
no, there will be no reevaluation of assessment for 22. That has not come from the province as to when they're going to do a reassessment. What MPAC did when they came to visit the offices looks at specific building permits and plans for permits that we have that have closed or are closing, so that they can get a sense of adding that.
Right, but overall, we're not gonna get an assessment again for 2
No.
years in a row.
That is correct. Anybody's assessed CVA will not change unless they've done an improvement to their property.
So get ready, the people are gonna get hit.
Well, you don't know that. No, you
You
don't.
don't know that.
You don't know that. It can go either way.
Question.
Yeah, so we're at, just again, for the reminder to the committee, that all properties are assessed, or up until COVID hit, all properties in Ontario were assessed on a 4-year cycle. So the first cycle actually goes back. So let me go back. We had a cycle which assessed all properties on January 1, 2012. And those assessments came into effect for 2013, 2014, 2015, and 2016. Then we went to a new base year on January 1, 2016. And those assessments went into effect for the 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020 tax years. And because we have not gone to a new base year, those assessments that were effective January 1, 2016 are still in effect for the 22 tax years.
Yeah.
But we've had growth since 2016 as well, some growth. Anyway, you wanted in?
Yeah, and you sort of answered it. So we're still going off of a 2016 assessment in 2021.
Base year, 2016 base year.
Right,
Yeah.
2022, but have they given us any indication of when? I know they came, but has anything changed since that discussion? Like, do we know what the pathway forward will be and when we can expect that new 4-year grouping?
The values that they're evaluating right now on those properties
only
They didn't give me
reduced.
the timing, but I'm sure that their intent is to try to get it on the roll return, so that we have an accurate number, assessed value for 22 to know what those new properties or those properties growth is.
And so it'll be, can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
So just for, yeah, so they're missing, because it should have been redone in 2020, correct?
And in fact, you know, they didn't make this clear during their presentation here, but MPAC did a complete reassessment on the property of the province, which was effective January 1, 2020. But they just didn't roll it out. The province said, no, we're not going to roll that out. And so they've done it, but they haven't rolled it out yet. So we don't know whether they'll use that information and that data, which is January 1, 2020 current value assessment, or whether the province will say to them, we're going to a whole new cycle. We have no idea which way it'll
Start
work.
fresh in
Yeah.
2022. Right, I guess the question I had is that have they given you any indication on when they'll do that?
No.
But the answer is
No,
no.
still not. Although I did do a webinar recently about the effects of the pandemic on future market value. And probably everybody's aware that properties are selling at exorbitant prices. And they are seeing, you know, the values of homes at least doubling,
Yeah, with
which is
no change from 2016 until 2022, that's 6 years worth of growth projections that have been missed. So, or real growth, not projections. That could be, like Councillor Dilba said, that could be quite a hit against some people's taxes.
Yeah, and then the consequence of that as well is that we've seen commercial and industrial partners hit with loss of revenue, and they're on a cost-based valuation. So we may see a reduction in some of theirs because they've been impacted by the pandemic. So it shifts, the burden of tax will shift for sure.
And I think the main lesson for us as an admin finance committee and the main challenge for us is the following. Remember that an increase in assessment does not necessarily mean that the taxpayer pays more taxes, because we are the ones setting at this table who set the rate that's applied against that assessment to determine your tax bill. So if assessment goes up by this much and we decrease the tax rate by this much, everything ends up even. So you always have to remember, the property owner is the guy that writes the check. He should be paying more attention to his assessment, but he doesn't always. But our job is to determine, all right, his assessment went up by $300,000, but did we adjust our tax rate to take a full chunk of that 300,000, or did we lower our tax rate so that he pays the same? And that's a balancing act that we as a committee and county council as a group have to decide. Now, over the past 8 numbers of years that I've been on county council has made it a point to always take advantage of the growth portion of assessment, but to reduce the county tax rate so that there's no implication to the taxpayer for the increase in assessment, which is due to the 4-year phase-in. So, I mean, these are multi-moving targets, if I can put it that way. So I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. This is good dialogue that we should be having.
For sure.
So my next slide is actually that, an analysis of the total tax, residential tax rate from 2011 through till 2021, which is a 10-year span. Our total tax rate hasn't been, has been below 1.2 since 2013. So I think we've been managing to, you know, I think the lowest one was 2016, and that was when we had Giant Tiger come on board with the additional assessment. So that's speaking to what the mayor has said with respect to, you know, we have control over what we tax at. I did do a little calculation of a 2% in our tax rate with no change in the county or education. Typically, the education, the provinces lowered the education tax rate. They didn't in 2021, so I'm making the assumption that maybe maintain that same level. And that would result in a combined tax rate of 1.3% increase to a total tax rate of 1.209. So if I applied that tax rate to our average or median property of $196,000, that would be an increase of $26.39 annually, or approximately $2.20 monthly on that median property. So next slide is I'm actually showing you that median property over from 2015 through 2021. This particular property that I pulled actually showed a decrease in the CVA, that 2016 CVA, which is reflected in 2017. So they actually saw quite a decrease in that year because their assessment decreased, and our tax rate actually increased. You see our tax rate increased at 5.5 in that year. The overall tax rate increased 2.7, but that particular property, because the assessment dropped significantly, saw a decrease in their overall tax payment. If I do a combined annual increase, totaling all of those increases / decreases, the amount that particular property has paid over that 5 or 7 years is $63.66, or $9.09 a year. On this slide as well, I have shown you the OMPF, how that partnership funding has fluctuated. We have seen it go up, and then in the last 2 years we have seen that decrease fairly significantly in 20 and 21. A couple of years ago, I provided a slide with respect to the Fraser's Institute about taxes as a percentage of income. So this is an updated 2020 version of that. If you went back probably 2 or 3 years, you'd probably see a 2015 version of this same thing. Things haven't changed a whole lot, but it's interesting to note that total property taxes equate to about 6% of the amount of tax we pay. We always think, we get lumped in with all the taxes, and consider the amount of services that an individual or property owner receives from a municipality, and the amount of taxes they pay compared to income tax and health tax and sales tax. Even if you look at sales tax, that's 14.5% of their income is being paid towards things that they buy, consume, and don't have anything to show for it half the time. My next slide is a comparison of property tax sales on purchases. So I think I've even used this slide before. 2 people going out for dinner, $60 a week, $3,100 annually, and the tax on that's $405 in HST. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I just wanted to give you some comparisons of what we spend without really thinking, and what we get for that compared to property tax.
Going back a slide or two, with the one more, Rebecca, if you would. So again, I don't want to bring the impact discussion back up, but all those numbers are based on a static 196, right? What happens to those numbers? Do they change? We don't know.
In 2022, they do not. This particular property will see the same assessed value as they are currently in 2020.
And so no matter what they do, it's not going to, there's not going to be any retroact. They're not going to go back to 2020 and say your 2020 assessment was based on 2016. It should have been this much, not 196. They're not going to do that.
When they activate a new reassessment, it will start whatever date they've said.
4 years forward.
Right. And what we don't know is, are they going to phase that over a 3-year period to get back on the same cycle, or are they going to create a new cycle where we go to the 4-year and it just gets extended? Yeah, for 2022, unless you have done an improvement to your property,
No
that
change.
MPAC is aware of, there will be no change to your assessment in 2022.
That's why they're looking at building permits.
That's why we're looking at building permits to gain us a little bit more tax revenue from whoever's done new builds.
But it won't, nothing will be applied retro. That's
No.
all my question is. It'll just be from that day moving.
From whatever day the province decides they're going to value, and they may change. Maybe they say the value is, maybe it is a January 1st, 2020. Maybe it's a January 1st, 21. I don't know if that makes a difference in terms of what the current value assessment would be, whether it is negative or, whether it's changed. We still see the market pretty hot. We're seeing properties sell, we get sales notifications or changes of ownership on probably, several a week.
Yeah.
On tax certificates, quite a few tax certificates with sales properties. So things are selling. We know our building department is very busy with building permits for new homes and for all kinds of other additions to people's homes. That won't come in effect in 22 unless MPAC gathers that information and is able to add us as supplementary. But it probably won't roll return
Right. 2023.
till 2023.
Okay, good. Thanks.
So we did the one, I don't know if anybody has any more specifics on the, what we do to other taxes on other purchases that we have. But I just thought those are things that most people can relate to, and just trying to put that in context to property tax. My next slide is one you've also seen before, where I'm looking at things that are related to monthly personal or household expenses. So the same house is paying taxes. If we look at the portion of the tax bill on this $196,000 assessed property, the total taxes were $2,300 or $195 per month. The township's portion of that is $1,300 or $109. If you remove the OPP and the conservation authority costs, which we don't keep, we have to pass those on to those two entities. We're left with $91 per month to provide all the services that the township provides to that property. So in comparison, vehicle insurance, probably lowballing that at $180 a month. Hydro $2 to $250, heating $2 to $3. Gas, I actually reevaluated this one because the price of gas right now, I had to move that one up a little bit. So it's strangely enough, that's $260. And cell phone, if you just have to use a cell phone once a month, you're looking at probably lowballing those numbers. But just wanted to show that in comparison to what you're getting on a property of that value. And we have a lot of those, we have a lot of properties in around that same value.
And of course, the homeowner or the property owner that's writing the check looks only at one number. That's the amount on the check.
Yep.
And that property owner, he writes that check to the corporation of the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal, and he doesn't even consider the fact that out of that $500 check, only $91 is coming to the township per month. And he forgets about the fact that that pays for his OPP services, that pays for his conservation services, that pays for county roads and all of the social housing that county maintains, and pays for his education tax as well. He forgets all of that, and he comes storming into his friendly counselor or his volunteer community citizens.
That's one of the reasons why I try to communicate this at a committee meeting, so that, and I do put my last presentation for the 2021 budget is actually on our website. So I try to put that out there so people can see it, and hopefully they can look at it and get a better sense of what the dollar is being spent on. My next slide is actually leading towards capital. giving you an analysis of our capital expenditures from 2017 to our budget of 2021. And our auditors have always indicated that we should be spending or funding our capital to the rate of 1.5 times of our amortization. Bearing in mind that our amortization is historical, not replacement cost. We've been doing relatively well. I'd like to show to council that our annual capital to amortization rate ranges from 1.17 up to 1.35. To get to 1.5, we need to spend another $400,000. And that equates to about 6 or 7% of a tax rate increase, but we can't do that in 1 year. That's just not physically responsible. But it is possible that we take and chunk that out over several years and decide to commit to a capital levy like we did in our water and sewer, where we decided we were going to bill or levy against the property owners a specific amount of money so that we can put some money towards our capital to make sure that that deficit, infrastructure deficit doesn't grow. So it's possible, but it's going to take time. It's not going to be something that we can tackle in 2022. Having said that, in 2022, we have people that are not seeing an assessment increase. So if we're going to do it, maybe the best time maybe is to do a 2% capital levy on properties. That only gives us another $120 or $120,000 to spend on capital, but it'll bridge that gap of that $400 that we need.
And then for all members of council, this is the township asset management plan that the treasurer is talking about. All of our assets have been listed, and including our road assets, which we list by road segment, and our buildings, which we list by historical cost, and our vehicles, which we list. I guess now pretty much all of our vehicles are original costs, because we've been at this asset management plan now for the better part of 5 years, I think. And so the asset management plan tells us what we should be spending in each of the various categories of capital in order that we don't run into what they're now calling a capital deficit, where we're not spending enough on capital to replace what we're losing in amortization or usage, if I can put it that way. So this is available to members of the committee, and they may want to ask for a copy and get it. I had forgotten completely about it. Although we talk about it all the time, it's a while since I've seen this document. So just draw that to your attention that it is available. Go ahead.
So leading on to the next slide, I'm going to talk to you about what we're considering for our 22 capital. In previous years, we have provided a 10-year long-range capital forecast. We're proposing to bring forward to committee and council a 5-year. I think it's a little bit more reasonable to look at that 5-year span as opposed to a 10-year span. But along with that, I've developed a business case template that I'm going to get my department managers to utilize to propose their 22 capital budgets. In past years, we've used basically a sheet that indicates what we were calling before capital projects for consideration, where we identified mandatory P1, P2 projects over like the next 2 or 3 years. I didn't find, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I think that council or committee members did not find enough detail within those capital for consideration sheets. So the idea is to provide you with a business case for each capital item or project that we're looking at, to outline in more detail the specifics around that particular ask, and having a lot more information for you. So I'm hoping that's helpful. We'll have to see what those look like when we bring the capital to you. And relating to our AMP again, that AMP was done in 2019. The report is dated February of 2020. Based on that AMP, there are values associated, but as much as we printed that document, it's already out of date. Because in 2019, in 2020, and now in 2021, we have made betterments to a lot of things. We've bought some vehicles. we've replaced some roads, we've made some changes to equipment, so that ever evolving AMP, it's a great document as guiding, but it's already past, it doesn't reflect our true condition right now. But we still have to look at it and say, where are we at in comparison? And the AMP said we should be doing $5.1 million in capital. We typically do about 2.2. So we have that gap.
But do we not, at the end of every year, after we've contributed certain amounts to capital, and that capital could either be replacement capital in vehicle, or it could be, a roof on a building, do we not update this at the end of every budget year so that it's always current?
Not that particular document, no. What I do is within citywide, I will make those changes to the assets, and we can generate new reports, but that particular document is not updated annually. Typically, you're required to update your asset management plan every 5 years.
Well, that means
So-
new values in.
We will end up
Into
having
the
new
schedules.
values, and the other aspect to our asset management plan is the province has certain things that we've got to do by a certain deadline. We have one more requirement as part of our asset management plan, which is due in 2024, and that is to determine our proposed level of service. We already know our current level of service. We have to look at growth and proposed level of service and determine how we manage that. So that's our next requirement within the asset management plan, and that's 2024.
Okay, so Councillor Cameron wants in.
Yes, thank you. Melanie, with the new information that you're going to supply us at budget time, is that in direct relation to the new computer applications that we have purchased over the last few years, that we're able to get that information now?
Yes, the citywide is keeping and maintaining a record of all the replacements and all the new values associated to our assets. So we'll be able to draw that out and provide, more updated where we stand with those. We'll be doing more additional condition ratings on a lot of our assets. We did a roads need study, I think in 2015, so I'm not sure we have to do that again, revalue our roads. We have them as a stagnant value or condition at a certain point in time, but you need to revalue them because there's so many aspects that affect a road, the traffic, the weather. We can say it's in fair condition as of 2019, and depending on weather conditions or the traffic patterns on that road, it can change. Water is very damaging, so we can have flooding, and we need to revalue those things. So it's an ever-changing document. I think when we presented that back in 2020, I think we reflected that. Our consultants from Public Sector Digest tried to explain that this is a document that's created now, but it will change annually.
And the other thing that I just want to remind the committee about is that when the province first mandated that all municipalities create an asset management plan, the specification for the plan was that your assets, your tangible capital assets, would be entered into your schedule at their cost base. That was the criteria, the cost base. And they knew that many of our cost bases would be what were referred to as historical. For example, our buildings, even our vehicles, some of them we didn't know how much we had paid for them when we first started this process. The point that I'm getting at is that the criteria was cost base. Now that asset management plan is designed or is mandated to now cover several other metrics than just cost base. Cost base is one, and Melanie has just referred to the fact that down the line, the next metric that we're going to have to build in is level of service. But in between, there are several other metrics that we've now put in place. So cost base is one.
Risk, probability of failure, consequence of failure.
Right.
There's we need to determine the current replacement value, which will be ever revolving as we move along through, based on costs annually for road replacements or whatever.
right? So that's, now we got cost base, we got level of risk, we've got increasing cost,
Probability of risk.
probability of
consequence.
risk, and then is level of service the last one.
Yeah, and what we have to look for is what is our proposed level of service? Like, are we in order to meet this deficit, are we going to have to decrease a level of service in order to meet that deficit? Or can we increase our level of service based on, do we have enough growth that can support and fund that level of service? So it's a complicated, definitely complicated set of criteria that we have to look at.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Getting back to this slide, the AMP have identified that there's a financial strategy to reduce the infrastructure spending gap over the next 20 years. This is in the report that the mayor has on his desk, taken straight out of that particular report. So tax funded assets, we should be doing an average annual tax change of 1.2%, which speaks to what I said before. We can't do the 6% that I'm saying we're behind in, but we should probably be committing 1 to 2% for capital alone as an increase in our 2022 budget. The next slide, I've actually done some annual requirements. This is where we talk about a replacement value as opposed to replacing it based on historical costs, because we can't use those values as the possible, as the possible value that it would cost. So I've broken it down in a couple of different asset categories. So the main one is our roads, HCP. We have 117, almost 118 kilometers.
No, that's HCV, historical cost base?
No, what is the term?
High concentration business.
Material.
What's
asphalt?
asphalt?
It's probably the easiest
Way to describe
terminology to describe it.
Why don't we just say asphalt or surfaced? Okay, and what's LCB then?
That would be surface. That's low concentration.
Low concentrated minerals. No, we don't.
Sure.
In our capital asset policy, we are not replacing the gravel roads. We have indicated that those are perpetual. No, we don't use a useful life on them because annually we apply gravel to a portion of those roads to maintain them in our operating budget as opposed to capital.
But my question there is that those two categories of roads only total 141.4 kilometers, and we know that we have more than 141.4 kilometers of roads. I think we're up around 190 something.
Yes. So there would be 65 kilometers of gravel road
In addition to this 141.
in addition to that.
And why don't we include the 65?
In our asset policy or TCA policy, we have determined that we are not including them because we're saying they have perpetual life. We're not ever going to replace a gravel road. All we do is better it each year with an operating gravel. We don't.
Okay, but how does that fit in with our aspiration of converting our gravel roads to hard surface in order to reduce our maintenance costs?
That's a completely different thing with respect to the asset management plan, because that's another tangent that we need to explore. That would be where we say that's the level of service we're going to increase. So how do we manage to do a proposed level of service where we have all of our roads paved? So in our next iteration of the asset management plan, we are going to have to try to put a financial strategy or funding strategy around moving to that level of service, if that's what council intends to do.
But I thought that we had crossed that bridge and that was our stated goal, because one of the factors was that once we can reduce that gravel surface to a hard surface, we can justify the removal of one grader, which is a high cost asset. We can justify the removal of one grader from the fleet. And I mean, graders are expensive both from a capital point of view and from an operating point of view. And the idea was we can, by improving the road surface and not needing so many graders, we benefit both ways. And I don't know that how you can categorize that as a, but anyway, let's not get into that philosophical discussion. I thought that we had crossed that bridge, that we were on a tangent moving down that road.
So Mr. Mayor, if I could, so let's say that we decided to convert 4 kilometers of gravel road.
No, 20.
Okay. Well, let's just use 4 kilometers for now. Those 4 kilometer segments of gravel road that were converted to either surface or asphalt would then move into the asset management plan at those costs and then get incorporated in.
Okay, all right. Okay, so not to interrupt, I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. So bring us back to this particular chart. So the 118 kilometers, we say that the average useful life of that, of those types of roads is 25 years based on our TCA policy. So the annual replacement is about 5 kilometers. Most of our asphalt roads are in fair condition, according to our asset management plan. So we need to be putting $2.3 million annually to replace. We can't do that. We know we're only doing, maybe we're lucky if we get $1 million in all of our roads, let alone just for our asphalt roads. So we've got to look at trying to figure out how we can bridge that gap by increasing it incrementally over a period of time. I won't go through all the rest of them, but I do want to give you a bit of sense of, we're doing fairly well. And again, machinery and equipment and vehicles are fair and poor, but that's as of 2019, we've made some major changes in our machinery and equipment and plow trucks and such. That's a different value now, which I can provide to us when we do capital at the next budget meeting. The next slide is about priority capital projects. So there are 3 major priority projects that council has identified. The Johnstown drainage project, which the Class D estimates are about $1.4 million. We'll need to determine funding sources for that particular project and over how long, how many years are we planning to do that project and how do we fund it each year. The Spencerville drainage project is also in the engineering stage with Class D estimates of $827,000. We will also need to determine funding sources for that and the stages at which we have some money in the 21 budget to put towards that 827 and are doing a lot of the engineering work for that. So, but we still have, a lot of work with respect to that particular project. Staff just submitted, and we do have a package as part of your agenda package, the Green Stream application for a water project on County Road 2. The total estimate cost for that project is $2.1 million. If we're successful in receiving the grant funding, the township would have to commit $570,000 of municipal funding over a 3-year period. Part of that project, which is not eligible for funding, is sanitary and storm, which we would do simultaneously at a cost estimate of about $550,000. So we would then again need to find funding sources for that. We do have reserves, but it would drain our reserves. So we might have to look at potentially borrowing. If we borrow or increase our tax levy, we do run the risks of draining our reserves or also maxing our debt borrowing capacity for other things. So that's just it's just trying to put things in a big perspective, because we talk about these projects in isolation. In some cases, we have a lot of conversation about the Johnstown, Spencerville, drainage. We need to look at it in totality because they are big projects and will have a big impact. We can't. We only do 1.9 in total for all departments. This is far exceeding that. Those priority projects, and we're not going to get them all done in 22 by any means, for sure. I just did a couple of. Next slide is the reserves and reserve funds. I have taken a few reserves that we typically use for some of our capital administration. These are balances as of September 10th. I didn't include all of them. I know in a previous slide, I had included water and sewer contribution to capital. And I did that purposely because our amortization includes water and sewer. But the township budget, when we're talking about capital within the township budget, does not usually include those environmental services capital. So we're looking at, these are the type of money we have to spend on some of our 22 capital.
Right, and I'm not just going to interject there for the benefit of Mr. Rainville, and just a reminder to the committee that the reason sewer and water are not township expenditures, that all expenditures on the Cardinal sewer and the Cardinal water and the Spencerville sewer system have to be borne by the users of those systems. So we treat those three systems as separate entities. They don't get funded from taxation, they get funded from user fees, both for their operating costs and for their capital. So we have that delicate task of trying to set a user rate on each one of those three systems, which will cover not only their this year's operating costs, but a contribution for capital that may or may not occur at some point in the future. But they're not funded from general taxation. Councillor?
Yes, just a question to the treasurer, and that is regarding the Cardinal Hydro. We're looking at, as of September 10th, 134,639, and then there's a transfer out in 2021 of 43,500. Has that already been transferred out?
No, it's still a budgeted
It's still,
transfer.
okay, so it does come off at the 134.
If the project
Yes.
proceeds and if council directs me to remove
Correct.
those funds.
Okay, thank you so much. That's all I have.
Okay, and by the way, and just going back to the priority capital projects, and it's not listed here because the treasurer is talking about 2022, but one of the capital projects that's staring us in the face, of course, is the construction of a new fire station in Cardinal. And we've already contributed, as you can see, from the reserve and the reserve funds in fire department under buildings. We have a reserve account of 310,000, and we've been trying to add, what's number do we try to add each year to that?
$30,000 or $50,000.
Right, we try to contribute to that reserve fund each year so that in the year in which we actually build that new fire station, we will have a chunk of money towards that capital cost. And I think that capital cost is going to end up being somewhere around 2 million, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I haven't actually seen the final numbers because there's still, there is an estimate for sure, but it is in around that too. In our window and work as well.
Okay, go ahead, please.
So then you probably have seen this slide as well, budget objectives. We definitely want to maintain our financial health. We want to make sure that we're conscious of the affordability for our taxpayers. We need to provide sustainable levels of service to the taxpayers, and we need to incorporate that 5-year capital plan that I'm speaking to, that we hope to bring to you in the next capital budget discussions. Swinging back to the impact, we need to be conscious of the future reassessment impacts that are going to happen to property owners and what the impacts to that tax revenue will be. We need to develop an investment strategy to see if we can't help to fund our capital funding. We have seen a drop in the interest rate, but maybe we need to look at other avenues for reinvesting some of the monies we have set aside in the reserve fund in order to try to gain some money outside of our tax payers. And we need always to be looking for infrastructure funding and make application to the federal and provincial governments wherever possible. Last slide is really our next steps. The first meeting will be definitely the draft capital. We will bring the business cases forward for the committee to review. I would like to put that in November. That gives staff and department managers who have certainly been taxed with a lot of things going on as of late, the time to really do a fulsome job of doing that. That won't put us back in timeline. It'll keep us on timeline, or if anything, it'll be before, because I typically would just do this report or this presentation in November. And then we'll follow with some operational budgets, maybe early in January when we know all of the impacts to the operating budget itself.
Back to this committee in November.
Back to, well, we can do a back to, I was thinking that on my way in here, whether we should
Is it gonna
do
be
a
budget number
specific
one?
budget meeting or whether we incorporate it in the min finance. And some of my thought is if we do it as a budget meeting, maybe we should incorporate both our public works advisory members and our administration finance members, so that we have even more information shared with
Yeah, that's a
committee
good idea.
committee members. So I don't know if we want to consider a separate budget meeting that's dedicated specifically to having those discussions.
Well, I think that to a large extent, that will depend on the weight of the number of issues that are coming forward to the other two committees. Because if we see that those committees are lengthy in 2 to 3 hours in length, then we will want to set up separate budget meetings. And my personal feeling is that I would prefer to see separate budget meetings. I think that provides a larger time for discussion. You're not so rushed because you're not trying to get through an agenda with another number of issues. And it's, it's more time to come to a consensus on what exactly you're trying to achieve with the current year budget. Okay, so that's the plan. Any questions of the treasurer before I move on to the next item on the agenda?
I hate to go there, but just for a scheduling. If we are gonna do them as separate, and we're not gonna do them as part of committee structure, can we pick a date, whether it's the 4th or the 18th? I don't think we can have one on the 11th, right? We did end up being a Thursday again.
That's what we were trying to do, was hold the budget meetings on a Thursday, I think. So
I just want to make sure that I have it scheduled off and that I have no conflicts, so.
yeah. So, and just, again, well, let's pick a date in November and schedule a budget meeting, and we know that it'll be a capital meeting, and it'll get into our calendars now.
How about the 18th?
And so would everybody see how the 18th looks, and we'll do the same thing in the evening at 6:30. And so I'm gonna pencil in November the 18th, 6:30 as budget meeting number 1. And then if you would like to make sure that the other 2 members of the PW Environmental Services Facilities join us. And these 2 gentlemen will already have it in their books from this meeting. And so that will be budget meeting number 1 of the 2020 cycle.
Sorry, what time did you say?
6:30. Now, again, I'm not averse to an earlier start, but I think.
I can come earlier, so I can be done at whenever we need to be done. So
Well, let's start that meeting at 6 then instead of 6:30.
whatever works best for me.
Okay, if everybody's agreeable. Okay,
I'm good with that.
and then when we get to that budget meeting, we'll set the next 2 unless somebody wants to suggest that we set a December meeting. And again, the time between the meetings is sort of a function of how long does it take the staff to consolidate what comes out of the first meeting and get ready for the second meeting.
I
But
don't mind the idea of setting the second one, especially if it is gonna be December and not January.
yes, well, I mean, and I have no problem with December. December, of course, is needless to say, a shortened month, but I see that we're going right to December the 23rd with county council. Not that that's a good idea.
Mr. Mayor, can we move the first meeting, budget meeting to the 4th and our second the 18th? And that gives a two-week window for staff.
Well, you'll have to ask the treasurer whether she can be ready for the 4th.
November 4th?
Yeah, I don't, I would like to have a conversation with the senior managers to see at what status I did signal we would be bringing capital to November, but typically that would have been admin finance. But like I said, I just had the thought when I was driving in here that maybe we shouldn't have it as part of an admin finance meeting because it's shoved into an agenda that we're trying to get other business done, so.
It's a different.
it's almost
Do you
too
think you
much.
could be ready for the 4th?
You'd have to discuss with.
I'm thinking the 18th is better. The treasurer is off for a couple weeks in October, and we want to just make sure that we're not trying to
Rushing through.
cram at the last minute to get everything ready for the 4th.
That answer your question?
That's
Sorry.
fine.
Okay, so then we're back to December. So could you do something like 2 weeks later on December the 2nd or the 9th? And that would give us 2 meetings prior to the new year. The reason I like to get 2 in before December is this. At county council, we're quite liberal in giving pre-budget authorization to certain projects that require tendering, because we've learned that if we can tender, for example, our roads project in October and November, and we do tender as early as October for April and May starts, we end up getting better pricing on our tendering because we're first out of the gate before the contractors have got a full plate. Once the contractors get a full plate and they're busy, they tend not to give you their best prices. They tend to bid, well, we'll bid this thing, it's a $2 million job, but we'll bid it at $2.5 million. And if we get it, we'll try to squeeze it in. And that's what happens after their plates are full. So the earlier you can, especially if you got 1 or 2 projects that you can tender out early. Now, I think we're kind of moving in that direction for the 2 drainage projects.
Through the chair, yes, I would anticipate that we would be looking at a few projects, looking for pre-budget approval.
Right. So could we look at either December 2nd or 9th?
I think December 9th would give a little bit more of a window, just depending on what comes out from the 18th, just to make sure that we're ready for.
All right, well then let's pencil in December the 9th at 6 o'clock again, 6 p.m. for budget number 2.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock on December the 9th. Okay, that gets us some momentum generated here. Are there other questions for the treasurer? If not, I'd like to thank the treasurer for a good sort of reminder of where we are, and a reminder, unpleasant as it is, of the financial pressures that we're facing. And of course, it's when we get to the first budget meeting that we get a divergence between what's required and what's doable.
They're a different enemy.
And yeah, it's a different story when we get there.
And you're getting into December, you ask Santa Claus for a lot, you don't always get what you ask for.
That's right. Sometimes he comes with an empty bag. Okay, so thanks again to the treasurer for an excellent presentation. And I'm going to move on then to item number 6 on the agenda, which is discussion item centering on the AMO recommendations in rising insurance costs. And this specifically relates to the resolution passed by Leamington, which is a resolution urging the province to move us away from joint and several liability. And so I had asked that this resolution from Leamington be brought up for discussion to see whether or not there's an appetite from this committee to recommend that council support this resolution from the municipality of Leamington. So the chair is open for discussion on item 6A.
Is it necessarily going to be the reduction in insurance costs?
Well, not necessarily, that is for sure, but we do know the joint and several liability, even though the province challenges our premise. But we do know the joint and several liability does have an impact on our premium levels.
That's cool.
Now, of course, if we were going to support this resolution, it goes without saying that the third rationale clause, which is whereas the municipality's total annual cost of insurance premiums, if we were just supporting Leamington, we could just support the resolution as it is. If we were gonna revise it to be a resolution from the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal, it would have to be kind of reconstructed. Easiest thing and the simplest thing to do is just support the Leamington resolution. So is there any discussion here?
I would support the Leamington resolution.
Okay,
Okay. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
okay, I'm getting 2 nods. Another one. Yeah, another one. Okay, all right, so then this would come to council as a resolution to just support the municipality of Leamington. Everybody fair with that? Okay, all right, moving on then. We're now at item number 7A, which is information item, which is the Rail Safety Week proclamation, which is almost over, I think, or getting close.
Through the chair, it's from September 20th to 26th.
So before the council meeting anyway.
Correct, next month.
But I think you pointed out in one of the briefing notes that because we've done it before, the mayor can just declare it.
Yes, through the chair, whenever we receive proclamation requests, where the requests have previously been granted within the last 5 years, I receive them and weigh the eligibility criteria. And if it meets eligibility criteria, which obviously it has because we've approved a proclamation in the past for this exact same thing, then I prepare it and issue it for the mayor's signature.
Okay, so it doesn't require a motion to council then. Okay, so that deals with 6A and 7A and basically 7B meets the same eligibility criteria. And I believe the Legion is looking for the proclamation, looking for some comments from the mayor. Okay, so that gets me then on to 7C, which is the 2021 federal payment in lieu of taxation revenue issue, which is a thorny issue to say the least. And I think maybe we'll start this one and maybe just have the treasurer kind of try to build a picture around this. I'm having a hard time getting my head around it.
Certainly. So through the chair, the first time that the staff actually was made aware of this particular issue was receiving an email from Canada Post that the federal government was not going to pay the provincial legislated reduced VAT rate. They were going to pay the reduced VAT rate instead of what the province had legislated to maintain the 2020 VAT rate. And then subsequent to that, and I believe both these two communications are in your council correspondence packages. We did receive a notice from OMTRA, which is Ontario Municipal Tax. I'm sure what the RA is, something registered association. And they also flagged this as an issue. That particular communication indicated that the reduced rate from federal departments would lose revenue to municipalities in Ontario of over $20 million. It impacts us. We have probably 3 or 4 properties, two Canada Post properties and a Public Works Canada property. So the total loss of revenue is $2,500 for the township here. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it's still a loss of revenue, needless to say. The other part is that the CF, which is commercial payment in lieu full, indicates that we retain the education portion. So other properties, we share that education with all the different education boards or the school boards. When it's full, we maintain that. So we have provincial CF properties, and we retain that education portion of those properties. And the province has committed to paying us the full rate.
province has committed.
Yeah.
Okay, so other questions here? And I'm taking it that this is basically an information item. Are you looking for recommendations from the committee?
There is recommendation.
Committee recommends that council support a motion that the federal government and all crown corporations commit to paying the legislated business education tax rate of 0.0125 for 2021, which is almost behind us. Have we not received those payments already?
No, federal and provincial PILs are later in coming most often. We send those out and we sometimes don't get those later until October or November. They're not on the same schedule of due dates because basically they create their own due dates and they basically create their own tax bill because they send us what they feel they want to pay instead of what they're actually doing.
I'm happy to move that recommendation.
Okay, so I have a mover for the recommendation, Deputy Mayor Deschamps. Does he have a seconder?
Yes, but I think Councilor Gillibaugh wants in here too.
Okay, so let me take the seconder. You're seconding?
Yes.
Councillor Cameron seconding. Okay, the motion is on the floor for discussion. The recommendation's on the floor for discussion. Councillor Dillaw.
Yes, is this ongoing every year now that we'll be paying this BET, or is it just 2021 or?
This issue just arose because the province legislated to maintain, they legislated a reduction of the BET rate.
Right.
But they said that any of their properties or crown corporations would pay the 2020 rate in that same block of legislation. I don't think it's something that we'll see on a go forward. It's just a matter that we're having to deal with for 2021.
For 2021, so it's a one shot.
It's a one shot.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion?
Once it starts.
Further discussion? Questions of the treasurer? I'm about to call the question on the motion before the table. Hearing none, Councillor, those in favor? Okay, our motion is carried. The recommendation will come to council in that form. And so now I'm moving on to item number 7D, which is the 2021 ICIP Green Stream application. Now, ICIP, Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Green Stream. Over to you, Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll actually defer to the Director of Operations to give you a high-level overview of our submission.
Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is an information item. The purpose to provide council with the final application for Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Green Infrastructure Stream 2021 application. The 2021 Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, ICIP, is cost-sharing infrastructure funding program between both federal and provincial governments and funding recipients. Program in total has about 30 billion in combined funding for various projects, including green infrastructure. The focus of this year's green infrastructure intake segment is on potable water. In past years, we've had the focus more broad and it took in sewage and storm as kind of secondary inputs to the stream. Project eligibility for this project will be assessed using the outcome-based approach, and applicants will be able to apply for a maximum of $5 million in total eligible costs, including contingency funding. The County Road 2 water and sewer replacement grant applications were unsuccessful in 2015, 2016, 2018, 2019, 2020.
So we had 5 previous applications.
Correct. So
Different programs.
That was all for the Highway 2 project. This year's application will take a reduced scope approach and focus on sections that provide for the most concern. Project will cover the section starting from the west, approximately 744, 742 County Road 2, and heading east approximately 800 meters, terminating at St. Lawrence Street. The existing water main in this section was installed in 1953 approximately, and is made of cast iron, and historically has been or had the highest number of water main breaks in the Cardinal system. So the ICIP Green Stream application and technical schedule are before you tonight for review.
Okay, and now just for background, the total cost of this project was, what was it again? 2 million? 2.1 million, and as I explained earlier in the meeting, these costs would normally go to the users of the system. And in Cardinal, sewer and water systems, a slightly different number of users on each system, just because of the way the system was built. But if I recall correctly, the total number of users on the water system is what number?
739.
739 users on the water system.
So connections.
Sorry, connection.
700.
Residents or province.
Okay, connections, but each connection pays, right?
Yes, yes.
And then on the sewer system, it's a slightly different number.
It's a little lower, it's about 30 or 35 connections lower.
Right. So you can see that a project of this nature would be very onerous to those 700 users, and that's why these programs are so important to us, and that's why we've had 5 applications, 5 previous applications. Now, even if this application is successful, we get a federal funding and we get a provincial funding, but we still have to kick in, as the treasurer explained earlier in the presentation, somewhere around 500,000, which will go back to those users. And we will borrow the money on their behalf or take it from the reserves. Okay, so are there any questions with this application?
I just, one for the record, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Is it 800 meters we're doing?
It's
That we're applying for?
through the chair, 800 meters on the main stretch down the Highway 2 corridor. There's a little map attached there. And we'd also be putting about 100 meters into Loop Canal Street. Up the south end of Walker Street and hook it into the Highway 2 main. And that would also give us a third means of transporting water back and forth from the north and south side. And the Highway 2 corridor is actually very important to the system. It's like a trunk, because in the daytime when the water plant's running, water's going up through Shanley Road and up actually just up at the end of Water Street and crossing to Dishaw, and it's filling the tower and pressurizing for both sides. At nighttime, when the plant shut down, the water basically comes back down the tower and pressurizes that way. So being that corridor there with just the 2 spots, it's a little it's a difficult spot if you have a break close to one of those intersections that could cause a lot of problems. Where we'd have a third also, which would basically supply an added layer of protection in the whole village water supply, not just one side or the other. So it's a main trunk basically, and in effect it supplies the whole town in one way or another.
Okay, further questions here? This is an information item. I don't think there's a recommendation because it's already gone in, right? Okay, everybody understand where we are now? Maybe somebody can, either Mr. Grant or Mr. Shaw, you can tell us what the timeline is. Do they give us any indication of when decisions will be made on these applications? I know we have a federal election. Somebody told me about a federal election. I can't remember where I heard it.
Yes.
Maybe it was everywhere.
Through the chair, they're giving themselves an adequate window. We should know sometime between, I believe it is June or July 2022, between July 2022 and September 2022 on whether we are successful.
July to September. Wow. And just so you know, the way this program will work, because it's a federal provincial program. Well, the way this, yes, exactly, because the provincial election will be in June. And the way this program will work, and the way the other federal provincial programs are work, is that if the province approves the program, and generally the province takes sort of first position, and then they nominate the programs of all the ones that come to them. They nominate a certain number to the federal government. Now, it doesn't have to be that the federal government approves those ones that the province has nominated up, but generally the feds will they will pay heed to the ones that are nominated up from the province, which means that the pressure point here is the MPP, Mr. Clark, who's our member and our minister and the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. That becomes the pressure point. And on the last application, we know that we had good support from the MPP's office, but it didn't lead us anyplace. So now we have another application. We start all over again. Are there any other questions here, Councillor?
We're looking at a total project of 2.1 million, but this is just for the placement of the water, right? This you're not considering any of the costs of the sewage and wastewater water or the road repair and stuff in here. So this total number for the total project's going to pretty near double, isn't it?
Through the chair, there is a provision for the road in there because it'd be big enough for the water,
Yeah.
but the sewer and the storm aren't included in it. It's the very direct aim kind of at water with this one, and particularly the transportation of water. And so the questions, the qualifying questions they ask you are basically, is this something that will improve quality or increase the possibility of transition to other areas and so forth. But being that this trunk is the main artery of the water system, it's very important, and it did qualify with just you populate some of the fields on the application and automatically it pops in the response, which it did come across that would fit in with this. But I think the treasurer had mentioned another $500,000 in sewer or storm and wastewater.
Right. So this program will dig the trench. It'll pay for the water pipes. It'll pay for filling in the trench, and it'll pay for the road. But it won't pay for the sewer pipe, which will be extra. And it won't pay for the laying of the sewer pipe, the labor. So that's where the extra $500,000 comes from.
And we would do it if we got the.
Yeah. Now that part, the sewer pipe, we can't charge to the whole township because that's the users of the system. The filling in of the hole is covered by the grant. The pavement on the top and redoing the surface is covered by the grant. So the users of the system are basically going to be stuck with the cost of the sewer pipe and laying the sewer pipe. That's where the $500,000 comes
Through the chair and the storm.
And the storm. Now the storm is a different thing because the storm can be separated and paid by the entire township, I think.
Correct.
From general taxation, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
That is right.
Okay, so you see how the project kind of divides itself?
Yeah, so just to sort of summarize that, this particular stream actually really reduced compared to previous ones where we were able to put a priority project, i.e. water, and then also put forward a technical schedule with respect to wastewater and storm and encompass the entire project. This time, they were quite clear in the guideline that only something directly related to the water project is eligible. Do not put anything else additional in because basically they throw out the entire application.
Right. Okay, are there any other questions here? Everybody understands the direction this is taken?
Well done to staff.
The box is in the hen house. We'll see what happens. Okay, so now I'm going on to item 7E, which is the Blue Box program and the transition to producer responsibility, a big project. So I'm going to let the CAO speak to this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'll start off with, I am somewhat glad that our transition date is February 2025. I anticipate that there will be a number of growing pains throughout this process. So I'll maybe turn over to the Director of Operations and the Treasurer, who both have attended the webinar on this. So
Through the CAO to the chair. So this is another information item, the blue box program transition to producer responsibility. In the background, in 1994, under Environmental Protection Act, all municipalities over a population of 5,000 were required to implement the blue box waste management program. On a yearly basis, reports to Waste Diversion Ontario are submitted, qualifying waste diversion to your blue box. Compensation for the program is based on this report. Due to program insufficiencies, Minister Gannick, Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, directed Resource Productivity and Recovery Authority, REPRA, and Stewardship Ontario to prepare a proposal to transition the blue box program to full producer responsibility. In August of 2019, recommendations were accepted by the government. Minister York announced that the government's intention to move to full producer responsibility. On June 3rd, 2021, the government of Ontario finalized the blue box regulation under Resource Recovery and Circular Economy Act, Ontario Regulation 31-21, setting the framework for transition from shared fiscal responsibility, which is 50% municipal and 50% from the producer, to full producer responsibility. Transitions take place over a 3-year span starting January 2023 and be completed by December 1st, 2025. The regulation transitions existing blue box services to producer responsibility in 3 groups according to blue box transition schedule. Blue box transition schedule identifies eligible municipalities and local service boards areas and the date that they're to transition. Producers would be responsible for transitioning communities on or before the dates contained in the schedule. Edwardsburg Cardinal has been included in the final stage of with a February 2nd, 2025 completion date. Attached is a template provided by REPRA to help council steps taken to date and the next steps and decisions that council should consider. 2 reports are required to be submitted by municipalities. The first, the initial report to be submitted on or before September 30th, 2021. The initial report is based on Section 54 of the Act. It is a mechanism to advise producer representative operators, pros, of municipal contacts, population distribution, and numbers of properties qualified to benefit under the program so that your planned, efficient, cost-effective service. Staff is in the process of completing this report and advance of the September 30th deadline. So in August 15, 2019 was the cutoff date for the where the number of residents in a municipality. The program is based on those numbers from that point. So there's still some ongoing negotiation on how anything that after that date would pick up the cost of the recycling. The second one is a transition report to be submitted on or before August 31st, 2023. That's based on your region or the group you're in. Transition reports based on Section 55 of the Act, which provides a more detailed description of collection requirements in terms of who's eligible, pickup location, frequency of pickup, etc.
Now, the big issue for council, and there are a whole number of decisions that have to be made. The way I break it down, and there was an excellent seminar during the AMO conference on this, but what I consider to be the prime decision that council has to make rears its head on page 58 of 90. And on page 58 of 90, under the executive summary, if you go down to the 4th bullet point, the 4th bullet point makes it very clear that we transition on February the 2nd, 2025. That means the producers become fully responsible for the costs. Now, our key decision is the next bullet point. Like council will likely need to make decisions in the following key areas. Number 1, does the municipality want to provide services to the producers? In other words, do we want to do the promotion, the education, the contract management, the collection, and the processing on behalf of the producers? Because if the producers are interested in using our services and we can make a mutually agreeable commercial agreement, that would put us in charge of directly overseeing the program. Consider the alternative, and I say this to council, consider the alternative. The producers may hire an entity in Toronto to provide service in our area. And they may try to manage that remotely from a place somewhere not in our township. Who's going to be getting the calls on the day the truck doesn't show up? You know who's going to be getting the calls is the people sitting at this table. My feeling and my recommendation to council is we should jump in here quickly and say, no. We know they're going to pay for it, but we're going to provide the services. We want to provide the services and we want to negotiate the conditions and an agreement under which we provide the service, you pay the bills. Now, that's the key in my area, in my idea, that's the key decision that we have to make. And then you get the whole question of how will it be decided? And notice that one of the first things that we would have to do is delegate authority from council to our staff to enter into discussions with the producer PROs and the service providers to determine what the terms of a commercial agreement might look like. So that's a big negotiation process. And then there's a whole bunch of other decisions that follow on that. And those are all outlined later. And we don't make that decision here this evening, but I say to council and the committee, and it'd be one of these committees, either this one or Councillor Cameron's committee, that will be tasked with leading the discussion that will lead to that decision. So, Councillor?
Just a question. Is the counties involved in this in any way?
Not in any way.
Not in any.
No. Service is provided on a municipal basis, on lower tier level.
Yes.
And needless to say, think about where we sit here. In our township, we provide weekly collection of household garbage, which we're gonna do anyway, And the truck that does that also does the green box cardboard every second week, and glass and cans every second week. So we're already paying that truck. Would it not be more efficient for the producers to hitch on to our contract than to start from fresh? And look at the position that we're in. We provide that service throughout our whole township on a weekly basis. Augusta does not, but we could very easily be hooked in with Augusta on some producer program that doesn't even meet our standard. So I say to council, make this decision early, give our staff the mandate, and then let's start lobbying for that result. Just leave it as a hanging chad for tonight.
That means that we're going to be able to continue using the boxes that we have.
Doesn't mean anything.
Oh.
We're starting from scratch on February the 2nd, 2025. Unless we negotiate to keep what we have.
Okay.
And enter into a commercial agreement with the producers. Mr. Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to draw committee's attention to page 64 in the hard copy, but it would be under servicing requirements.
Let's look at 64 in the hard copy. This is where the rubber will hit the fan, no doubt. Go ahead.
No, I just want to draw your attention, like with respect to there, you'll find the chart there.
Yes.
With households with curbside garbage collection, which is what we have.
Yeah.
Right? We have curbside blue box collection, and you'll notice that it says no less than every other week.
Right.
Right. So it's just something to, right? So what they're really saying is not weekly, but the producer only has a responsibility every 2 weeks.
You're right. And that's a provincial standard.
That's a provincial standard.
Oh, that's
Okay?
right.
And then a little further down, which is a little concerning, but it's been that way from the start. It would be the last paragraph in that section. Note as discussed, throughout the consultation process, municipal governments would not have first right of refusal to provide services to producers. Decisions on contracting would be made by the producers.
Yep.
So
They've got
it's just, so as of right now, we're not sure if the producer is going to be interested in even entertaining, working with municipalities. Certainly, the hope is that they will be, because I think there's a number of larger municipalities that, you know, have their own collection and et cetera. So there could be some good value in that. But I just wanted to draw your attention that that's a bit of a concerning item.
right. They don't have to get in bed with us. And I'll just draw council's attention to the financial thing here. We provide that weekly collection every week. And we pick up the household garbage every week. We pick up the cardboard this week and the glass and cans next week. The producers pay 50% of the cost for the pickup of the cardboard, paper, and the glass cans. So our truck that basically picks up the household garbage is basically subsidized by that producer contribution. Unless we're in an agreement with them, we're going to be paying the full cost of that truck that picks up the garbage. And our costs, our net costs to pick up the household garbage on a weekly basis will go up by at least 50%. At least. So think about making that decision early, Councillor.
I can see where you're coming from, Mayor, that this might be a profitable thing for the township to get in to maintain the service we have. But I question your analogy that our costs would go up a whole lot in going around, because what you got to consider is that truck that's going around, if you follow it around, 50% of the capacity of that truck is pretty near blue box stuff that's going in it. So now that truck's in where most of our routes, that truck goes back and dumps and then comes back and refills. Most of the time that truck won't have to go back and dump. He's going to be totally garbage. There's not going to be any recycling in there. So he's not going to be making that as many trips back and forth. He's going to be doing one round. So I doubt that it will go up a full 50%. There might be a trade-off there where, and it's good for us. I think we should be negotiating with them, but you're also going to look, Waste Management's going to be trying to negotiate with them too, that they're going to take away from us. And, okay, we're going to run around, and then it's going to be up. The big thing with our staff is negotiate with them. Well, now you're getting paid big money as you're running around this route, picking up that truck that we were subsidizing you on before. We want a big cut in the cost of what we're paying for our garbage to get picked up.
And you know what? You're absolutely correct about the fact that the truck will have a capacity. But just remember the way the trucks are designed, and I can't comment on this because I don't know the technical mechanicals of it, but remember that the truck that picks up the household garbage has basically two bins.
Yeah.
The bin that's closest is for the household garbage, and then he throws the cardboard or the cans one section further, and there's two different compactors on that truck, and if he's not, the point that I'm getting at is, can his route be twice as long for garbage collection? Maybe it can, you know.
But a lot of, as we know right now, the truck we have here, like, let's face it, we all know it's broke down all the time.
Yeah.
They need a new one, and you can see why they're not going to a new one.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because
They don't know where their
if they-
future is.
If they don't have that,
Yeah.
the new truck they're gonna buy is the same as the Ottawa trucks.
Yeah.
Ottawa trucks go around once and pick the garbage up, and then they go around again and pick the blue box up. They don't pick them the same.
Oh,
There's
seriously.
one truck follows every. You go down Stagecoach Road, there's one behind the other. One picks the blue boxes up, one picks the garbage up. There's totally one compartment compaction, eh?
Oh, okay.
So That's what I think they're waiting on. They're like waiting to try to edge it out. And, okay, we're just probably picking garbage up and the truck we buy is going to be a one compartment.
Okay, so you're making a good counterpart argument, but we're not gonna pursue that argument tonight, or we'll be here till 1, 2.
Just the same as when I think
Yeah.
that we need to negotiate, but it's all these points that need to be considered when we're
Yeah.
negotiating.
Yeah, Counselor?
Yes, just to be clear here, when we talk about the blue box program, we're actually talking about blue and green together.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That-
Okay, so if there's no further questions, I'm gonna move on from here, and I'm sure that this will come back, Mr. Graham, on another agenda. And we will get down to a long discussion. And we will have to come to a decision on that basic question of whether or not we wish to provide the service and mandate our staff to enter into discussions. We'll have to come to that. Okay, so then I'm at another very interesting issue, which is number 7F, which is the 2022 municipal election and alternative voting methods, i.e. internet, telephone voting. Here we go again.
Here we go again.
Here we go. All right, so the clerk has given us a very comprehensive briefing note here. And just as a reminder, we have used IntelliNet for the past several elections. Looks like 4 elections, 2006, 10, 14, and 16. And now the question is, where do we stand for the 2022 elections? And there is a recommendation, the committee recommends that council pass a bylaw to authorize the use of alternative voting methods, specifically internet and telephone voting for the upcoming 2022 municipal elections. So that's the meat of what we're discussing. Now, there's a bunch of side issues that council should be aware of. Number one, our clerk has extensive experience in just the 2018 election. You weren't here in 2014, but I think you're at county.
Through the chair, no, I was in provincial before that.
Oh, yeah, we're in provincial. Okay, so the clerk was in the 2018 election and actually ran the 2018 election when we used IntelliVote. And IntelliVote at that time was the selected internet provider of electronic voting as a result of a county tender process in 2018, was it not? Or did we deal directly with them?
No, through the chair, in 2014, there was an RFP went out and IntelliVote was selected.
And that RFP was just from us.
No, it was a clerk's initiative through the clerks group of the counties. It's not the United Counties that actually runs it. We have an internal clerks group dedicated from the 10 municipalities as well as the 3 separate municipalities. And then in 2018, there wasn't a lot of pushback from most municipalities or clerks that were raising concerns. So in 2018, we actually sole sourced. However, in the coming 2022 election, a couple of the municipalities and clerks have raised concerns about sole sourcing again, just to make it open and transparent. So we are going through another joint RFP process. We have done that in the past and there have been a couple of bidders in the past. I cannot determine what 2022 bids may or may not look like. But we have consistently stayed with IntelliVote in previous elections due to their reliability, as well as them providing a little bit of a discount as a group effort rather than doing it per municipality breakdown. There's also benefits in regards to accessibility matters and consistent training, advertising, and local general education of the public if we're doing it by grouping.
Okay, so then the clerks group is going up to an RFP. There will be many responses, or there could be many responses. And so the RFP goes out will be reflective of how many of the 13 entities wish to participate. And, yeah, so that's why the decision here tonight is timely.
Through the chair tonight, I just need a decision whether or not we want to actually go through alternative voting methods. So that way I'm on the subcommittee of preparing the RFP, so it'd probably be good that I'm actually helping out to formalize it rather than just kind of taking a side burner.
Okay, so the floor is open for discussion. Go ahead.
I don't know that there needs to be a whole lot of discussion. I'm just gonna move the recommendation as it's written.
I'll second it.
Oh, you are.
I need some discussion, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, me too. And Councillor Dillabaugh. Okay, is seconding. Okay, so you want to speak to it first, you're the mover.
I think that in the write-up from staff says everything that needs to be said. 65.2% voted by internet and by telephone. I certainly do not want to take that opportunity for 65.2% of the 51% of the people in our township that voted. I don't want to take that option away from them. I think, people with disabilities, that sort of thing. We're in the middle of a pandemic. I don't even know why it's a discussion in 2022.
Councillor?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I had my concerns up until this weekend. I read this somewhat on Friday, and what I had to go through this weekend just to get my wife to be able to vote was absolutely ridiculous. 3 trips to Brockville, 3 trips to Elections Canada, 3 trips to the hospital for various signatures, driver's license, and things like that. I would support the recommendation as just through that.
You're frustrated.
And frustrated isn't the word for it. However, Deputy Mayor Deschamps strongly suggested the words with handicap or disabled people. I totally agree 100%. The only thing in the recommendation that I am concerned about, ballot voting is not included in the recommendation, and I would like to see that in there. I do not want to get away from the opportunity for people to have a ballot vote as well as electronic.
Don't misunderstand.
Okay, so,
The clerk would like to speak.
yeah, okay,
So
go
through
ahead.
the chair, as per the Municipal Elections Act, part of a council decision is we're automatically doing paper balloting. I haven't made any suggestions, recommendations as to the otherwise, it's just assumed. This is only to authorize the alternative use voting for internet and telephone.
Alternative in addition to.
Correct. So I'm not making any recommendations to veer away from paper ballot voting.
Right.
However, I will advise you, there are a couple of municipalities within Leeds and Grenville due to the ongoing pandemic that they are looking to do only alternative voting, but I have not supported that.
Okay,
Okay.
other speakers?
That's my.
Other speakers? Well, I'm gonna speak, and no, I'm gathering that the reason other people aren't speaking is because they sense an affinity to the recommendation. I'm going to speak, and I'm going to speak against the recommendation, and I'm going to speak against the recommendation strictly on principle, and my principle is that I do not like electronic voting. I have no problem with voting by telephone, and I don't have any problem by voting by mail. But I do have a lot of problems with voting on the internet because it's, number one, it's not auditable. Now, I say that having gone through 4 elections myself personally, and at least 2 of those were IntelliVote. And I know the service that IntelliVote provides, and there's no question that they have improved their game tremendously since the first election that we had with IntelliVote. And the 2018 election, you could see lots of improvements to the IntelliVote component. The big problem with the 2018 election was the voters list, which came from MPAC, and the voters lists were awful. They were just full of errors, but that was not IntelliVote's fault. And they did work very closely with us I'm giving IntelliVote all kinds of credits, but I just don't like the concept of internet voting. As I say, telephone and paper ballot, or phone in, telephone and mail-in ballots I have no trouble with. So I'm gonna vote against the recommendation strictly on the fact that I don't like internet, because it's not auditable. So that's just my viewpoint, and not looking for a rebuttal because I'm gonna lose the vote.
That's okay, I wanna just clarify something when I get the opportunity.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's all. I think he was ahead of me, so.
Mr. Mayor, all I want to say is, had this opportunity been available today to my wife to be able to vote by internet, there would have been absolutely no problems. But to be able to get her to vote by mail, it is just horrendous. Don't ever go through it, whatever.
So,
Anyway, that was my deciding factor.
Fair enough. Yeah, I understand.
so my question to staff, to clerk or CAO, has there been any questioning of fraud or voter discrepancies when it comes to internet and a televote? Have there been issues in the last 2 municipal elections, or worries about? I mean, I hear the worry about a fraudulent ballot, but has that been actually raised post-election by anyone?
Before you jump in, I'm gonna provide point of information. So my point of information is this: yes, there has, and it was in South Dundas, and there was a conviction. And the individual was found to have voted 6 times from the same computer within a very few number of minutes, using 6 different PIN numbers that he picked up off the floor of the post office. And that was a fact. So is that a major thing? Maybe, maybe not, but it happened, and he was convicted. Go ahead.
So through the chair, I was gonna raise that point actually.
I didn't think you would.
Those risks always happen, no matter what. That is public, and certain individuals are not as trustworthy as others. However, within our municipality, in the time frame I've been here, and since we have started electronic voting in 2006, as far as I'm aware, going through our records, we have not received any fraudulent issues being raised, other than South Dundas, and that was unfortunate.
No, it wasn't. It was criminal.
Yeah.
It wasn't unfortunate, it was criminal.
And I'll jump back in for 1 second and to just rebut again, the mayor. Your worry was the auditability. You just proved that the auditability actually and accountability is there. They got him. They know how many times he balloted. They know how he got those ballots, and that they were fraudulent. So
Yeah, but
if the system works, it works.
Well, no, it didn't work. The only way that it came about was that he was bragging to some friends about these PIN numbers, envelopes that he had picked up off the floor. If he kept his mouth shut, he would have gotten away with it.
If he used other computers.
Yeah, if he used another computer, yeah. So anyway, I sense where the discussion is going. I have no problem losing. I'm gonna call the question. Those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Okay, and opposed, if any, other than myself? I guess not. Okay, so the motion is carried. And let's just hope that the result of the RFP is internet, but is IntelliVote, but we don't know that. We don't want to have to learn a whole new system. No, we don't.
Believe me, we
I
know.
don't think Clerk's gonna do a whole new system either.
You want it, Mr. Rainville?
It's just a post comment. What is it that IntelliVote does differently than any other?
We don't know because we haven't had experience with the others. But we do know that the system that they provide is a pretty robust system. Works pretty well, very responsive to the people that are campaigning. You dial the 800 number, you get an answer right away. And they're very, the clerk can indicate more about the level of service.
Yes, thank you. So through the chair, in not predetermining who we're going to select at this point, because we're still in the RFP process. However, past experience, IntelliVote does provide a more robust system to the clerks that are having to actually manage the election and organize everything on a daily basis. Dealing with candidates, it provides a candidate platform that circulates all of the electors lists, and you are able to, as a candidate, go through line by line by line, who you've spoken to, things like that. It just provides, it's not 100%, no system is great, but it is better than others, as well as a couple of the other companies. I'm not going to name names, however, they have come into some issues of delaying the results by 2 to 5 days. Usually with IntelliVote, last election, we had all of our things, all of the votes from IntelliVote by 10 p.m. We were one of the quickest in Leeds Redville.
Because a big percentage of our vote came on electronic, and we get that 5 minutes after the polls close.
And this is, of course, auditable.
Yes.
Sorry, what was the question?
I was just saying, so this system is auditable, you can audit the system.
No, I don't think you can audit it. There's no way of, they say it's auditable from the point of view of once a PIN number votes, it can't be revoted. So I have a unique PIN number, you have a unique PIN number. Once those PIN numbers vote, nobody else, but there's no way of counting how I voted. I mean, in other words, I can vote AB and the computer might vote BC. I don't know that. On a paper ballot, those 2 ballots are clear, A and B. Go ahead.
So through the chair, months leading up to the actual election, we hire somebody. Again, I won't say who it is, it's a local individual that is very knowledgeable with computers and internet and et cetera, we run through weekly tests and audits on IntelliVote. We try to mess the system to make it do something wrong. And we do tests on a weekly basis for probably 2 to 3 months leading up to the election, just to see if we can get it to do something. And in 2018, when I ran the election, I could not get it, and neither could our auditor.
Yeah.
So there
And that's the good point.
consolation.
That's the good point, no question. So anyway, the vote's taken, and that's the way it goes. So now I'm on to the last item on the agenda, which is 7G, which is cannabis plant odor. I brought that up because I was asked by a constituent to bring it up. And the clerk again has provided a briefing note which kind of outlines the situation. And you know, I don't want us to get into swatting a fly with a sledgehammer, so I'm not going to pursue this issue. I don't think we have a mechanism. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. I don't think we have a mechanism to deal with it, but anybody with a complaint, the clerk makes it very clear. The line of complaint is to the Minister of the Environment. Now, are there any other discussions with regard to that item before I move on? Hearing none, I'm going to move on. And so now I'm at item number 8, which is council inquiries, notices of motion. Does anybody have anything to bring up there?
I do, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Seeing that we're on discussion of our capital budget, I tried to get our tennis courts refurbished in 2020. But as we were going through it, Council Hunter brought up that I was too late at the last budget meeting. So I kind of like to put maybe our recreation, and as you said, Mr. Mayor, we didn't have a plan. So maybe this year we can start by our first meeting in November by having our recreation director work on our capital budget for refurbishing our tennis courts in Johnstown.
Okay, so the councillor is asking that that capital project be added to the list of potential capital projects to come forward at the first meeting.
If I may, Mr. Chair, that is the project that we are submitting for funding for. with respect to that, of the tennis courts in Johnstown and in Cardinal. As
And
part of the community building fund.
Yes, but I like to have it there in case we are unsuccessful in January of 2022 when it's announced.
So, yeah, so through the chair, I was just trying to indicate that project would be something that would be coming on the capital projects. And we would be planning that the money would be funded from the community building fund.
Okay.
And we should know that the results of that, I believe, in January.
okay, now is that fund a 100% contribution?
That is correct. We are putting forth for 100% coverage.
Oh, okay, now I've lost track of the provincial program or federal provincial? Trillion?
Trillion.
Oh, it's Ontario Trillion. Oh, okay, so 100% funding.
Correct.
Okay, but it's all or nothing from them. Okay. So that's partial answer to your question. Anybody else bring anything up under inquiries, notices of motion? Counselor?
I have a couple of inquiries, just information one first. Last Safe Nation Conservation Authority meeting, I put the proposal forward to them for our Kids Fishing Week, to have it take place at the Cardinal Park that we're developing down there, and they're quite accepted to it. So we're having our first budget meeting on Thursday. We'll be in the running for it. I'm pretty sure we will get it. They have 4 places they run it at now, all in South Nation parks, but they're looking to expand, and because they've contributed to our dock down there, they were accepted to come into Edwardsburg because they want to expand. Most of them are all in the eastern region. They want to get expanded up here, so we may be looking for a little help and stuff. I don't think there'll be any financial cost to it for us, but we may need some volunteers. We may be asking for some volunteer help to organize it when it's there. They send a couple of people, but we may need 2 or 3 at the free fishing week.
Okay, is it a whole week now?
Well, no, they run it on the Saturday of the fishing week.
Okay,
Either
so
the Saturday or the
it's the
Sunday.
kids' fishing day.
Yeah, they split it this year. They had 2 of their things were on Sunday and 2 of them were on Saturday.
Oh, I see, okay, yeah.
Because their staff was running 100%, so.
Right.
We would like to get to pick them whether we want it on the Saturday or the Sunday, so. Just find out. My other inquiry was with all the pandemic and all the vaccines and stuff going on, and pretty near everybody established. Have administration established a vaccine policy for our staff?
Over to you.
Through the chair, it is in development. It is just being reviewed from legal and also information from the health.
The reason I bring it up because I've had various inquiries of hockey parents that are soon going to start attending rinks steady, because South Grand will start up on what if our staff is vaccinated. A couple was kind of asked about my daughter because she's one of the screamers, and I said yes, granddaughter. I said yes, she definitely is fully vaccinated. I said, well, what about the other ones? I said I can't comment on that. I don't know. And they said, well, what's your policy? So I didn't have an answer for them what our policy was. So.
And part of the reason that employers, and we're an employer, part of the reason that employers are having a hard time establishing policies is because there's no provincial mandate from above. I mean, it's really, I mean, not even the school boards are able to determine that all of their teachers are vaccinated. It's causing a fair amount of problem. I mean, and even the situation where we're having difficulty at county council with the 2 long-term care homes. I mean, it's very difficult to to hire staff right now. But what makes it even more difficult is that even at Mapleview Lodge, where the personal service workers are in constant contact, we're not allowed to say that our personal service workers have to be vaccinated. We're not allowed to make that mandate, nor are we allowed to question, from what I understand, but go ahead, you know more.
Well, I will tomorrow. Because of my involvement on the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, that council that I'm on, I'm on a Zoom call tomorrow morning from 10:30 to 11:15. It just says where officials from Ministry of Health will share information about the implementation of vaccine certificates. So
The certificates.
yeah, the certificates and how they'll be done. So, and I think that'll go a long way towards how policies are developed. So a little bit more tomorrow. I assume it doesn't say that it's embargoed, so I should be able to share it as soon as I know anything.
So to the CAO, how are we dealing with it from an employer's point of view, policy wise?
If all goes well, I am hoping to have something in front of the committee for next Monday.
Okay, so it'll be, well, we'll wait to see what comes forward. I guess that's all we can do.
There's a lot of businesses and most universities have already mandated that all staff have to be vaccinated. But
Winchester Hospital announced that Thursday.
It's an employer's right to do it.
All staff.
Decide what your qualifications are to work for them.
We'll have the debate next Monday night, by the sounds of it.
Sounds like it.
Any others, anything else coming up under council inquiries, notices of motion? Okay, hearing none. I'm gonna go on to item number 9, which is the mayor's report. I don't have a report tonight. I mean, we're gonna have a good talk in the closed session, so I'm not gonna deal with anything else. Item number 10 is the question period. We have no one in the gallery to ask questions, and there's no inquiries coming over the Zoom. So item number 11 is the closed session. And so I'm looking for a mover to go into the closed session. Do I have a mover?
Move myself, second by Deputy Mayor Deschamps, the committee proceed in closed session at 8:46 in order to address a matter pertaining to section 239(2)C, proposed or pending acquisition or disposal of land by the municipality or local board, specifically a deferred land bank, job site challenge, and minutes of closed session dated May 10th, 2021.
Okay, I'm gonna call the question. Those in favor? Okay, the motion is carried, so we'll just have a short break and then get into the closed session. So
Move myself, second by Deputy Mayor Deschamps, the closed meeting of the committee does now adjourn and the open meeting does now resume at 9:48 p.m.
I like to be done when the time is.
yeah, okay, 9:48. Those in favor? Motion is carried. We'll now arise from committee of the whole, an in-camera session, and we're back in an open session. And so now I'm going to report out from the open session. Council met in open session, and there will be a motion coming forward from Councillor Cameron to accept the minutes of the closed meeting held on May the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dillabaugh, that committee receives and approves the closed session minutes dated May 10th, 2021.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. And so then reporting further from the closed session, the council met in closed session with the to discuss progress or lack thereof as it pertained to the Edwardsburg Land Bank negotiation and the job site challenge recent questions posed by Newmark. And council was brought up to date on both issues. And so now I'm looking for the motion to adjourn the meeting.
Moved by myself and second by Council Karen, that the committee does now adjourn at 9:49 a.m. or p.m.
Hey, we get double time, we're here until morning.
As always, those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you.